getting into this music. Is that Nintendo 8-bit game sound? Morning, everybody. I feel like Ellen. Dance to the music. I never watched that show. I just know she dances. Well, I'm sure that's why you guys tuned in, right? Just to watch me dance to the music. All right. Enough of that, Steve. How y'all doing this morning? Happy Thursday, May 9th. Congratulations on making it this far, this May 9th, 2019. So, some good stuff about Microsoft recently. So, as most of you guys know, probably by now, Microsoft came out with, they do their build session every year. It's kind of like their conference specifically for Microsoft. So it's like a DevCon kind of thing. And so sometimes some really interesting things get released and announced at these things because, that's kind of when the big announcement is. You get the keynote speeches by Satya Nadella, and you get all the different groups of Microsoft coming in and talking about things. But sometimes things also just kind of drop online. They get posted online. You get some sort of blog post or something from the dev teams. And, it's pretty cool. Like, a lot of this stuff just kind of happens all at the same time. And we kind of received, obviously yesterday we talked about, oh gosh, now all of a sudden my mind is drawing. I'm like, what did we talk about yesterday? Oh my goodness. Steve, you're getting old. We talked about something yesterday. You guys can go check it out. Go take a look at the YouTube video. I keep them posted. So, some good stuff. So today, I'd like to talk about the fact that .NET 5 was announced, which, there's a couple things that are in that question about like .NET 5. How did we get to .NET 5 and what happened to .NET 4? Well, actually there kind of already is a .NET 4. But we're still in .NET Core 3, and like there's kind of some confusing numerology going on there, and versioning that is just kind of, what's going on? So hopefully we'll clarify that a little bit in today's broadcast, and I hope to see. I hope that you guys continue coming to these things. I know I've been doing a lot more politic type of stuff lately. And I do continue, I do kind of keep my pulse on what's going on in politics, especially in the technological fields, like with Facebook and Twitter and the social media outlets, because I think that's important for us to know about, especially on the technology side. But today we're going to kind of talk a little bit more directly about technology and that Microsoft announcement. So. Okie dokie. .NET, a unified platform. That's right, a unified platform. So .NET 5 is I think it's still kind of an ambitious goal by Microsoft to do this, in that they're going to try to bring together everything in under one roof, right? We've got like .NET Core, we've got Core FX, we've got .NET Framework, we've got Xamarin, we've got just a whole slew of stuff, right? We've got all these different kind of technologies, from mobile to cloud to Internet of Things to artificial intelligence and web with ASP.NET and WPF and like all of these different things. But depending upon which technology you want to use and which platform you want to put it on, you've had to really kind of figure out, am I going to do Mono? Am I going to do .NET Core? Am I going to do .NET Framework? And it's just been kind of this, gosh, what do I use? And I have to keep writing my same application in lots of different ways. Like if I wanted to build a web application that was also a mobile application, well, there wasn't really any good merger of that, right? You could typically, what I would suggest would be build a web application and then just like have a mobile browser, like just make an application that loads up the page in a browser. And that's really kind of the only way to really unify the two sides of mobile and web. And then you've got desktop, like WPF. Like you could do pretty much the same thing too if you wanted to. You just build like a built-in browser that just goes straight to your URL and that's it. But, it's kind of annoying to do it that way. It'd be nice if we just had like one code base to rule them all. And that's what .NET 5 aims to be, is to be that kind of unifier of the different frameworks and technologies into this one platform, this one runtime, and this one framework, which is really, really cool. So they've, I'm just going to switch back over here and pull up my notes. So there's going to be so .NET Core 3, okay, is being released. And then they're going to jump from .NET. So their focus and their attention is going to go from .NET Core 3 to this new .NET 5, okay? And they're skipping .NET 4 because of the .NET 4 framework, right? .NET framework has been in this 4 numbering for quite a while for their versions. So in order to avoid that confusion, in order to just kind of like signify this is the end of all of those other technologies. It's not really the end, but it's just kind of like the merger of everything. So all of the releases are going to be kind of streamlined into one thing now. So the next major release after .NET Core 3 is going to be .NET 5. There will be just one .NET going forward. And this .NET 5 will be able to target Windows, Linux, Mac OS, iOS, Android, tvOS, Watch OS, so watches, right? And assembly, or WebAssembly. Not assembly, but WebAssembly. And it's that last one that really is intriguing to me because they've been kind of playing with us over on the Blazor side about, yeah, it's not really an official project. It is, but it's not. It's kind of one of these, it's a technology we're checking out, but we're not really having any official, project that's going to be definite. And now it's kind of like, well, we're going to be working with WebAssembly. And to me, WebAssembly is probably the one area that is going to have the most expansive growth. Okay, we kind of know what's going on with Windows and Linux and Mac. Like, they're kind of a stable operating system. You build the same applications for it. You use the same technologies for it. But WebAssembly has like this ability to just basically take all of that stuff that we build on desktops and just drop it in a web browser, which is amazing. And I think that's really kind of the direction that a lot of the technology is going, is rather than having to have an operating system and target an operating system specifically, if you could just target WebAssembly for your application development and then know that anybody can run it on any platform as long as I got a browser, why not, right? Okay, so from the inception of .NET Core project, we've added around 50,000 .NET Framework APIs to the .NET Core platform. That's crazy. That's 50,000. Think about that. And really, it's only been a project for what, maybe 3 years, right? 2.5 years, something like that. .NET Core 3, maybe, no, it's a little bit more than that, right? I think it's 3 full years. .NET Core 3.0 closes much of the remaining capability gap with .NET Framework 4.8, enabling Windows Forms. So, okay, .NET Core 3.0 is closing the gap with like the .NET Framework, right? Because there's a lot of this compatibility stuff going on, like which platform to use in order to deploy to which technology. And in this case, in what we've had to do before is we've actually had to say like build a .NET Core application, but then if you want to do something for Windows, go do it on .NET Framework, and you don't really have any cross compatibility. I can't just like take this code base from .NET Core and just easily make it work with .NET Framework. And .NET Framework just flat out doesn't work with .NET Core on those other targeted platforms. So it's been kind of a real, you have to almost maintain two separate code bases for different platforms because of that. So now .NET Core 3.0, which is the stuff that's coming out, is going to like enable forms, Windows Forms, WPF, and Entity Framework 6 into .NET Core, which is a really, really cool announcement. When they announced that, I was like, yes, all right, we're going to have like Windows Forms and WPF that we can like distribute to all these other platforms now. But they're basically saying we're going to just do this whole integration now under one roof. So instead of having .NET Core be that one roof, instead we're going to do .NET 5, and we're just going to take all of those things from like Mono, from .NET Core, from Xamarin, etc., and put them all under this one .NET 5. Okay, so they say that they're going to release .NET 5 in November of 2020, so that's going to be about a year and a half from now. The first preview available will be in the first half of 2020. So previews are always like, this is good to understand and get to know a little bit about, but definitely, just be careful with the technology when it's under this kind of, when it's under preview, because you don't really know if it's actually going to stick around some of the technologies that you might build upon. Yeah, I mean, it'll be good to see the first preview be available in 2020, and we'll be able to start building some applications to kind of project into the future a little bit. Also, they're saying that Visual Studio 2019 and Visual Studio for Mac and Visual Studio Code will be supporting this .NET 5. So that's all good, right? Like, we're going to have the same development environments that we're currently using. We'll be able to use to develop .NET 5, so we don't need to get any sort of special development studio. Like, if you wanted to build on Android, you'd have to get Android Studio, that sort of thing. Okay. Where'd my notes go? There we are. Let's see. So, it's going to produce a single .NET runtime and framework that can be used everywhere, including Linux, by the way, right? Including Linux. So we're going to have, I mean, just think about that. You're going to be able to run like Windows Forms apps on Linux. Yeah. And that's probably another reason why they're really pushing forward with the Linux kernel. That's what I was talking about yesterday, was the Linux kernel. Is the fact that they're going to have the ability to start running like WPF applications, and start to do like C# development on stuff that's going to deploy to Linux. That's more cats and dogs getting along. It's crazy. I mean, you have to understand my era, and most people who've done Microsoft development for a long time, this is just a whole new world. This is like, you guys are actually actively allowing us to, you're embracing these other technologies now. Finally. It took you a long time, Microsoft, but thank you, because we love the tooling that you give us. We love the C# language that you gave us. We love all this stuff, but man, we can't do anything for these other platforms. And just over time, they've been building more and more towards this goal, and I love it. I'm over the moon about it. Okay. .NET Core, .NET Framework, and Xamarin, and Mono. So it's basically just like taking everything, .NET Core, .NET Framework, Xamarin, and Mono, and putting it all under that one roof, like I was saying. It's going to be, so it also means that you're going to be able to build a product with a single code base to cover all of those different things. You just have to have different builds, right? You just say, this is the platform I want to target. I want to build this application. I'm going to target it for that platform. That's pretty cool. I imagine there's still some stuff that needs to be worked out, because I don't think that I'm going to be able to build Windows Forms that work on an Android or an iOS app. It's probably not quite going to be the case, but being able to build like a UWP app right now, you can pretty much deploy it anywhere, like do it on phone and Windows, but it just never really quite caught on, I guess. And so this is kind of cool, because we're just going to be able to build that one single code base and then just deploy to anywhere. Code and project files will look and feel the same for no matter what type of app you're building. That's interesting. So there's usually when you're dealing with different technologies, you have like a lot of, so Microsoft has remained fairly unopinionated about how applications should be developed, right? What the file, what the folder structure should look like. They have like a starter kit, their starter projects typically have some sort of format, but they're not really forcing you into it. Other than with like MVC, you kind of have to, but that's just because they do convention over configuration. And so there's a built-in opinionation to it. Opinionation. Look at me making up words. Anyway, so being able to like just build a project and then know that is the same format for all the different projects you might be building, right? If I was going to build a phone app, or if I'm going to build a web app, or if I'm going to build a desktop app, like the flow and the project building and everything that is necessary in order to build those things is all going to be unified under one thing. I wonder, what I'm really curious about, and it's not addressed in this article, and I imagine this is probably stuff that's just going to be figured out later on, but I remember in the early .NET Core days when they were really doing like project.json, right? Where NPM and Node have package.json to figure out the dependencies and all the metadata about the project and about the package. I wonder if they really tried to kind of push that a little bit in the early stages of .NET Core, but they just couldn't get it to work. They just couldn't. There were some other interests that caused it to go back into the XML format. And I'm wondering if they're going to try that again. I'm wondering if maybe that's going to happen. Thank you, SAA Consulting. He says .NET Core 1.0 released in June of 2016. Yeah. So, and we had a little early access to .NET Core before that. But yeah, so it's been about 3 years. All right. So it's going to remain, so .NET Core will continue to exist. Wait, sorry. Let me say that again. They say that everything you love about .NET Core will continue to exist. So the open source on GitHub is going to be cross-platform, as we talk about. It's also going to platform-specific capabilities such as Windows Forms and WPF on Windows, and native bindings to each native platform from Xamarin. So that's Android, iOS, that type of thing. Visual Studio for Mac, and Visual Studio Code integration, right? So they're going to have all those different development IDEs are going to be able to build these .NET 5 applications. There's going to be Java interoperability on all platforms. So Java, right? Are you kidding me? I didn't make that up. Oh, freaking Oxford Dictionary. You already had to go in. All right. Opinionation. I thought I made it up. It sounded like the right word, and it was the right word, but I made it. I swear I made it up. I never heard that word before. Thanks, Steve. Anyway, okay, so intend to ship. So, okay. So there's going to be Java interoperability on all platforms. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Like interop with Java. That's. I mean, I'm thinking about that. I don't even know how that's going to work. That's crazy. Java interoperability. I mean, you think back to like Sun Microsystems and Microsoft duking it out over the years, and they're going to have interoperability with Java. Wow. Objective-C and Swift interoperability. So they're again like iOS stuff, right? They're going to have iOS interoperability. And so this is kind of a big thing too. And they just kind of, it's like midway in their announcement. They intend to ship a new major version of .NET once a year, every November. Now, quite frankly, I don't like that. Like, I really don't like having these set goals of standard for deployment. that never seemed like a good idea to me. It seems forced, and bad decisions can be made when you have deadlines like that, right? It goes against the whole, in my opinion, it goes against the whole principles of Agile. To have this, we're going to have a major release once a year. Or if you're really, really, like, in my opinion, stupid, and you're Java and Oracle, and you're saying, we're going to come up with a major version every 6 months. Why? What purpose does that serve? I still don't understand. Just release things when they should be released, right? Don't promise us that these things are going to be done. And frankly, half the time, they don't even hit their marks, right? They say they're going to release on a certain date. Oh, there's some delays, there's some problems, and then they don't release it for like 3 or 4 months later, or possibly even a half a year later. So I just don't understand this. We're going to ship a major version of .NET once a year, every November. I just, why? Unless you're coming up with something that's, when you come up with something that's major and groundbreaking, or something that is not backwards compatible, then it makes sense to do that, right? You should be releasing a major version when you have a breaking change. That's what's supposed to happen. And by forcing this, you're essentially saying, we're going to be doing a .NET. I mean, what this rings to in my ears is we're going to make breaking changes every year. Why? Why would you do, like, I don't know. It just bothers me when companies come up with these arbitrary dates to be doing releases that don't have any real logic behind them, right? What is the point? Just so that you can say it? Just so that you can say, we're always current and up to date because we make a new major release every year. Other than that, it's just lip service, right? I mean, what exactly is it that's the new breaking technology? What's so great about the newest version? Unless you have something really great, you shouldn't be doing a new version. That's the bottom line. So until that comes along, I don't see why you would do it. Okay, enough of that. So they're skipping version 4 because it would confuse users that are familiar with .NET Framework. Obviously, everybody's been doing like .NET Framework 4.8 or 4.7 or 4.5 or whatever you're on. So it wouldn't make sense to have .NET Framework 4. Oh, by the way, we're doing a .NET 4 again, right? that would be a little weird. So they're just jumping to .NET 5, and it's essentially going to be, everybody under one roof. Okay, taking the opportunity to simplifying naming. So they're also going to do some naming. So I think what they're going to end up doing is like taking all of these different parts in these different namespaces of these different areas, and they're going to like create new namespaces. So there's going to be a lot of breaking changes with this. I really think so. There's going to be a lot of breaking. I don't think they're going to be keeping the same namespaces for a lot of things. Maybe they will, in order to keep that compatibility going with some of the older technologies. That's very possible. But they do say in here that they're also taking the opportunity to simplify naming. And I don't think that just means like .NET. Like, it doesn't mean we're simplifying the naming from here's a Xamarin product, and here's a Mono product, and here's a .NET Core product, and here's a .NET Framework product. I don't think that's what they mean by simplifying naming. I think they really genuinely mean, like, we're going to start to fix some of the namespacing that we're doing. And there's another article I came across today that was about there's going to be a new SQL client, a new SQL Server client, Microsoft SQL client. And that's going to, or Microsoft, no, what was it called? I can't remember now. But they're going to come up with a new SQL client for Microsoft. And that the old one is still going to remain, but they're just not going to do any more development on it. Okay, so they're doing something. I think this kind of, like, that's a little bit of a precursor of they're changing some of the namespacing in order to get themselves prepared for .NET 5. So I think there's more than just simplifying the name, like the overall name to just .NET 5, to hey, we're also going to be modifying some of the namespacing. Even though they don't explicitly say it, I'm pretty sure that's going to happen. Again, a little bit of projection, a little bit of, thinking ahead, and I could be wrong about that. They're in the process of making core CLR and mono drop-in replacements for one another. In the process of making core CLR and mono drop-in replacements for one another. So you could build a project around .NET Core, the command line, what does CLR stand? That's the runtime library, right? So the runtime for core and mono are going to be swappable. So you could just build your code base against one of those two engines, one of those two runtimes, and then just swap them out depending upon your target. That's like the underlying what's happening. The underlying principle of what's happening is all of these technologies are starting to be built under either the mono label or the core label. And they're making it so that either of those two runtimes, because mono man is what you can run on a Mac, on Linux, and also on like web browsers now too, like they're doing with WebAssembly stuff is under the mono project. So that means that you're going to be able to target mono or core CLR, and just depending upon which platform you're targeting, either Android or iOS, just swap out behind the scenes. They're going to do this. Right? You don't have to worry about it, but they're just going to swap out those two runtimes depending upon which platform you're targeting. That seems pretty simple to me, and I'm glad that they're doing it. It just means that they have to start making sure that all of their products are in line with matching those with those runtimes, right? That means they need to have like a unified API, I guess you'd say, for their runtimes. Right? This is the standard by which you have to have your output of your like your missile and stuff. Okay, and then the runtimes are going to pick it up. Okay, they want to make it simple to choose between the different runtime options. Okay, that's what that's for. I think that's almost everything. Yeah. So there's one more thing on here. All .NET 5 applications will be buildable with the .NET CLI, ensuring that you have common command line tooling across all projects. So that's kind of one of those things also from a DevOps perspective. If you're building things, common language runtime. Thank you. So if you are building your projects and you're doing deployment, like if you're using something like Docker, then you have these build processes in your DevOps and deployment that you do a lot of command line stuff. You like have a file, that, like a Docker image file, that you basically say, run these commands in order to build my image and get my image up and running. And so by having like this unifying CLI behind the scenes, that means you can it'll make the process of building those images a lot easier, because it's the same commands that you're going to run regardless of which platform you're targeting. And also I think that we may see, and this kind of goes back to yesterday's conversation about Linux and having the Linux kernel, I'm curious to see if maybe they just drop Windows containers. They might just drop that product, that concept altogether, and go strictly over to just Linux containers and just call it containers, right? Instead of having this division between Windows and Linux, because it's been kind of a problem for a while. And it's been like a technological issue with getting some of those images to work with Windows. So by them introducing Linux and having that, I think now they're probably going to just basically say, we don't need to do Windows containers anymore because we have this Linux kernel that's going to be running everything behind the scenes. That means everybody, we have a unifying Docker image process, as well as how do you build the command line tooling for those Docker images. Means everything is going to be kind of simplified and unified under this process. And that's a little bit more beyond, like that's a little bit of like these ancillary goals, these extra things besides .NET 5 and just trying to bring all the different technologies together. This is kind of that build process too. The build process for all of these different microservice technologies and stuff that help developers kind of build better applications. and streamline that DevOps process of deployment, that is really, really cool. So having that one single command line interface for all of your tools, for all of your projects, one .NET Core, one .NET command line interface. So developers writing .NET 5 apps will have access to the latest C# version and features. So .NET 5 is going to continue on with C#. There's no new language that's going to be introduced with this, at least that they've announced. I'm curious to see if they do something more with TypeScript because of TypeScript's growing absolutely astronomical popularity now. So I'm curious to see if they start to include perhaps TypeScript as a language that could build .NET 5 apps. That would be an interesting direction for them to go. There's no official announcement. I'm just kind of, again, projecting, maybe perhaps projecting things I'd like to see. But the fact that they're going to leave C# as the primary language of .NET 5 is really, really good. Because I love, as you guys know, I love the C# language. I think it's the best language out there. All right, so there we go. That's basically my rundown of everything. Does anybody have any questions? Questions? I'll give you guys a few seconds to catch up because I know I'm running a little bit ahead of everybody. But if you want to go into the chat, just type out any questions you might have. I'll give you guys a little bit of time. Let me see if I can find that music again. Right? In case anybody's wondering, what this music I'm playing is from pretzel.rocks, pretzel.rocks. It's pretty good. I like it. Where are we at? Where's my music? There it is. So type out your questions in the live chat, if you have any. Or did I cover everything? Do you guys know everything about it now? You have no more questions? No opinions? Might be a little loud. Turn that down. Welcome to Andromeda. All right, well, I'm not seeing any questions pop up, so I think I'm going to go ahead and call it. Thanks again, everybody, for joining me today. I appreciate it. Let me bring down the music a little bit. There we go. So I appreciate everybody joining me today. I hope you guys have a wonderful Thursday. Thank goodness we're past hump day yesterday. We're in the stretch here to home. That is the weekend. Tomorrow's going to be Friday. But hopefully you guys have a great, terrific Thursday. Don't forget, my Friday broadcasts are a live Q&A for you guys. You guys just come and ask me questions all day. Hopefully a little bit more than you guys gave me today. Please give me questions. I need questions. Otherwise, it's just me talking about articles that I find online. And I mean, who really wants that? Who really just wants me to read articles for them? So come with your questions tomorrow. Again, we start at 7:30 a.m. Pacific time every weekday so that you guys can come and ask me questions, learn about technology, learn about politics, learn about pop culture, whatever it is that is on my mind and I want to talk about for the day. That's what I bring up. So come prepared tomorrow because it is your day. It's your opportunity to come and ask me questions. Thanks again for joining me today, and I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.